Hey there, hope all is well. Just wanted to take a minute to share with you some information I put together to paint a picture of how this whole rethinking a dollar concept came together and kind of where it's going and how you can yourself can kind of get a better idea of where it's heading for yourself. And so I have, as you see on the screen here, a dollar bill or Federal Reserve note. And so today I'm going to do some comparison between a Federal Reserve note as well as this item right here, which is a gold American Eagle or a quarter ounce of gold, and just show the comparison of how it's changed over the last 100 plus years of the Federal Reserve system being in play, and also kind of lay out a time frame where you can see how drastically it's changed as far as our current monetary system of what we consider a dollar and the distinction between a dollar as well as a Federal Reserve note. And so to share with you a couple graphs here, I have the from the Federal Reserve website itself. It's the consumer price index for all urban consumers. So basically the purchasing power of the consumer dollar or the consumer Federal Reserve note. And so today I'm going to refer to as a Federal Reserve note because I love to make the distinction between what is considered a dollar and what is considered a Federal Reserve note, which has to do with the definition of both. One being the dollar as a defined amount of silver or weight, and the Federal Reserve note more so a legal tender document signed between the Federal Reserve Bank and our United States government to use as a medium of exchange for the citizens. And so that's a better way of putting that. But to take this graph here along with the gold chart here, 100 years of historical data, you can kind of see one goes in one direction as far as its nominal value having increased, and then the other one here going downward as far as the purchasing power or the ability of this note, the Federal Reserve note or FRN, and its ability to purchase goods and services throughout the years. And so I figured what better way to paint a better picture for you guys and the whole rethinking a dollar idea, and just putting it by putting it together to where both charts merge together so you can see directly for yourself the divergence between one going down and the other one going upwards. And just based upon that in and of itself, you yourself can see where this is all heading. I decided to put together a little visual aid, as I love to do. And so this one here is the merging of both of those graphs, with the Federal Reserve note being inverted at the very bottom to show its depreciation over the last 100 plus years, and then the appreciation of gold nominally in regards to how much weight in gold you can actually purchase with one single Federal Reserve note in and of itself. And so just to kind of start at the very beginning here, if we go back to when the Federal Reserve Bank was created in 1913, a dollar or a Federal Reserve note or a dollar in regards to silver in and of itself was considered to be, say, this point here, 100%. It was 100% pure as far as purchasing power. At that time, the cost of living was extremely low in comparison to what it is now. And so a dollar could go a long way. I want to say I've done prior videos to show how the minimum wage or an hourly wage was roughly like $1 a day, or $1 for a half a day or something like that. And so you look at today, we're talking about, minimum wage of $15 an hour. That's what they're trying to argue for. And so that won't actually work at the end of the day. But here we have 1913, the very beginning of the Federal Reserve banking system. And from this point here, we had a strong Federal Reserve note or a strong dollar. And the nominal price of an ounce of gold was relatively low. So an ounce of gold back then was, say, $20, because a gold eagle or gold garden Indian head or something like that would cost you $20. So a $20 bill would get you one coin. And so for the sake of simplicity, I decided to use a quarter eagle head here, which is worth $2.50 at this same time frame, and then also to compare it with a $5 Federal Reserve note or 5 Federal Reserve note, as I mentioned here. And so at this particular time, just to trace through history a little bit, you could exchange a Federal Reserve note. And at this time, because of the equality between these two items here, you could have gotten 2 gold quarter eagles for one of these pieces of paper right here. In exchange, you could go down to your bank and just give them this note here, which is an IOU. In exchange, you would get 2 of these quarter eagles. And so as you see here, one drastically goes up and the other one drastically goes down. And so throughout history of this country, there's been a lot of monetary policies, a lot of things implemented on our behalf that has caused this divergence of one going down and one going up. And so as you see here, it goes pretty steadily as far as to be able to exchange for a Federal Reserve note. And along the way, 1933, gold was confiscated. So we have that going on here. And then in 1465, silver was demonetized. And then what really stands out is the idea that during the same time frame here, one of these notes here could get you two of these. But yet if you fast forward to today, looking to get a quarter of an ounce of gold and to utilize what we would consider a $5 or 5 Federal Reserve notes as of now, it would take you 66 $5 notes or 5 Federal Reserve notes to get just one single quarter ounce of gold. And so it has to do with the idea that the dollar Federal Reserve note has depreciated drastically, 97-98% to this time period. And the nominal value of gold, as far as how many ounces you could purchase with a piece of paper, has increased. So just keep that in mind in comparison to just a quarter ounce of gold. But then as we fast forward through this track here, as I mentioned, everything changes. And about this time frame right here, as you can see, one just drops off as far as the purchasing power, and the other one skyrockets. And this all has to do with the 1971-1974 window, where Richard Nixon removed the gold or closed the gold window, which is basically defaulting on our agreement with other nations that we would redeem our notes for the exchange of gold that we held in our vaults here. And so once that window was closed, that was basically a default on our part. And from that point, this right here began to just drop off the cliff in regards to our government began to really ramp up the printing press, basically diluting the purchasing power of all the notes in play at that time, to the point where there was no doubt that this was going to get to this point. But during the same time frame, gold was considered money. Silver was still considered money. And so once this window was closed, 3 or 4 years later, 1974-ish, 1973, gold was then converted into what was called a commodity. And so it's always been a natural element from the earth, but it was labeled a commodity. And then that's when the whole futures exchange got started, and the manipulation began with the price, Federal Reserve price of gold. But yet it still didn't stop people from realizing the importance of it. And so it became more of an insurance hedge against the depreciation of this, as well as the implementation of a lot of policies. And so the price actually went through the roof here. So we have spikes, incremental spikes throughout. And so it's good to say these spikes or this price will never, ever touch this line, just because of the intrinsic value, the energy it costs to bring this from the ground into the hands of the people, and the idea that a lot of nations are de-dollarizing, but that's another video. But yet this item right here in form of gold always will retain its value, whereas in this Federal Reserve note right here, as you can see, is not really working with much. So just to keep it on moving, so fast forward closer to this time period now, you can kind of get an idea of how this has progressed over the last 100+ years, with the Federal Reserve note being devalued heavily, and then the nominal price of gold, or how many notes it takes to purchase a piece of gold metal, has increased. In 2012, when things were kind of in in the midst of the whole market meltdown, as well as just a lack of confidence in governments around the world, the price of gold spiked to an all-time high, $1,664. And so at that time, the purchasing power of the dollar was roughly, and what it is now, and what it's always kind of been at that 2-3% range as far as what it purchased in comparison to what it was able to purchase back then. And so just to give you some numbers on how this difference of 1600 compares to 3 cents at the time here, as far as using the $5 or 5 Federal Reserve, it would take 332 $5 bills in 2012 if you wanted to purchase 1 ounce of gold at 1664. And so 332 Federal Reserve notes to purchase 1 ounce of gold. And then you fast forward to today, there's been a little drop off. It's around 1300 or so. And so if you wanted to use just $5 or 5 Federal Reserve notes individually, it would take you 260 Federal Reserve notes to purchase 1 ounce of gold as we speak. And so this is the idea that gold has appreciated nominally in regards to what it can actually do for you. So based upon the quick assessment of this whole chart here, as you can see, paper in itself, the Federal Reserve note, has not been a good store of value. It has not done the people any good, because it has been debased heavily over the last 100+ years due to the policies behind it and our United States government taking advantage of all these tax loops and tax cuts, which basically only expands the monetary supply, diluting the purchasing power of what we use as far as our medium of exchange and savings and investing. Wow, the whole time, gold here never has changed. It never has changed one bit. The purity of gold has always been 0.90, give or take. And so if you have an ounce of gold, or this coin right here, it weighs 4.1 grams. And back in the day, it would melt value. This exact coin here in 1913, if you were to melt it today, take it to a gold shop and try to get some money from it, or if you held on to this for the last 100+ years, just the face value is $2.50, but the melt value, as far as what the nominal price of what's inside of it, the gold in of itself, is roughly $160 for this. And that's not to mention the historical aspect and the numismatic value and things like that for this particular coin here. Well, this piece of paper here, as a collector's item, could still get you a couple dollars, but as far as the newer notes, it wouldn't have no value whatsoever. And so if you also were to take this same quarter ounce of gold in 2018 with an American gold eagle, this thing right here would be still same purity, 0.9167. Face value now would be $10 if you actually looked at the physical coin, but the actual melt value is $330. So in 2013, this coin here was $2.50 face value, and it's worth roughly today $160. And then you take a 2018 coin with 90% purity, 91% purity, face value of $10, it's worth $330. So this piece of metal right here, from this point here all the way to this time frame right now where we're today, has always retained value. It's always been a absorbent of all these notes right here. And so as I draw towards the end, I wanted to just bring your attention to this idea. This quick assessment gives you an idea of what's happening and where we're at now as far as our current monetary system, where money itself has been labeled as just notes and not necessarily gold. But as you can see here, what has retained value the most throughout the last 100+ years. So my question would be to you guys, going forward, 2018 and beyond, what trend do you see here that will be worth taking note of? Where will this thing right here go? Where will the Federal Reserve note go? Where will gold price and metals in general go in comparison to Federal Reserve notes? So just wanted to share this graph with you guys to give you something to think about. And I'd love to just try to put together as much as I can into a concise visual aid to kind of highlight the idea that the whole rethinking the dollar concept is really beginning to understand how this piece of paper here over the long haul has done more harm than good. And those are that are aware of this metal right here, as well as silver, who have held on to metals throughout this time frame, even though it was illegal during this 40-year stretch, still retain some of the purchasing power of the Federal Reserve note of itself. So if you found this informative, I want to encourage you to download this visual aid here in the description below, and then share it via social media with your family and friends, and give them something to look at and walk them through the timeline, or it's better yet, they can actually see where this is all heading. It doesn't take much to realize that this blue line here can only go higher as this thing goes down. So other than that, hope all is well. If you want to find more information such as this, I'd love to encourage you to visit the RTD University page, where I've had all my interviews and things like that, where a lot of my guests cover issues such as this. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave me a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what I might have missed out on. Just wanted to put together something real quick and give you something to think about in the days ahead, as the price of gold in regards to how many Federal Reserve notes per ounce you can purchase it for will continue to increase, which is a reflection that this piece of paper here is losing its value even more. Enjoy your day.